Chair Alcorn,
Here.
Vice Chair Merib Steele,
Here.
Commissioner Field,
Here.
Commissioner Fisher,
Here.
Commissioner Henderson,
Here.
Commissioner Honey, Commissioner Ritter, Commissioner Smith.
Here.
With Commissioner Ritter absent, Commissioner Smith moves into a voting position. Chair, we have quorum.
All right, if everybody could please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. All right, and then we'll move on to approving the agenda. Does anybody have any agenda changes for tonight? All right, seeing none, the agenda is approved.
Chair, if I may, the original minutes did not include the public comment portion of the public hearing for HPC 052024. That oversight has been corrected, so you can call for the motion and second on approving it as it is.
Okay, perfect. Does anybody want to move to approve the minutes?
I move to approve the minutes per the clerk's certification. Sorry, for the July 15th meeting.
I second.
We'll do thumbs up or thumbs down for this one. Oh, there it is. Oh, we're back. Okay, let's just do thumbs up, thumbs down for this one. 7 in favor, the motion carries unanimously.
All right, so then we'll move on to the public comment portion of the meeting. So this public comment is general public comment and not related to either of the two hearings tonight. Has anybody signed in? Here comes Wendy. I'll read our blurb while we wait. So if you wish to address the board under public comment, please sign in on the public speaker form before the call to order for this meeting. Public comment is an opportunity to express opinions regarding issues that are not part of each of public hearings on tonight's agenda. A separate opportunity will be provided for comment for any public hearing. Each speaker is limited to 3 minutes. We expect comments to be civil. Disrespectful or disruptive behavior will not be tolerated. The board is not authorized under the Colorado Open Meetings Law to discuss, comment, or take action at this meeting on any issue raised by public comment that is not part of tonight's agenda. And here comes Pam, if you want to come on up. Thank you.
Hello, Historical Preservation Commission. My name is Pam Chadbourne. I live a block and a half from here, so a couple of topics, if I can fit them in. First off, I want to tell you that on July 11th, which was a Thursday, I wrote to the clerk. You may or may not be aware that since January, the public has not had direct access to any of the boards and commissions on the website. We have no way to email you or contact you or call you. It has to be through the clerk, so following instructions, I went through the clerk. And I asked the clerk to relay my email to you. It was about a July 15th meeting, that coming Tuesday, in the museum, a meeting about the Arts and Culture Master Plan. And I'm going to tell you, I regard historic preservation as part of arts and culture. Nothing gives sense of place like a historic district. Nothing does. It can't. And so historic preservation is part of culture. And I'm going to tell you that the example packets they've prepared for other cities include reference to historic preservation. So the founding of my request was very good. I had to write on Monday and say what happened to my request, and the clerk said, oh, I didn't deliver it. She gave 3 wrong reasons. I'm going to tell you something. I trust you, and so does the city, and so does the city council. They selected you to make important decisions under law, and that's what you do. I think you can handle an email from me or other citizens. You don't benefit from clerks' gatekeeping of citizen emails. Second of all, we have a city manager, city council form of government. City council appoints you, and city council is the part that responds to the people. And so the clerk's staff's interference with communication between the public and you, I think, is inherently a violation of our fundamental principles of government. So I just wanted to let you know that happened. I'm outraged by it. It is wrong, and I would like it to be changed. The city council needs to do a protocol, and that's totally legal and appropriate. Second of all, in the study session, I'm going to say when we make decisions, we often use a simple matrix, urgent and important. The most urgent and most important thing that you can do is protect our existing assets. And 2 areas are in imminent threat. Downtown, believe it or not, and Littleton Boulevard, Mid-Century. So I want to see, and the design standards and guidelines were done in 2011 for downtown. We urgently need an update of those. We need design standards and guidelines for Littleton Boulevard, greater area. And that to me is obvious. And that's what I, as a citizen, would like you to do. And I'm a knowledgeable citizen. I live down here. I go to a lot of meetings. I grew up here. I don't have a irrational desire for preservation. I think it's very logically based. So thanks for your consideration.
Thank you, Pam. To confirm it, does anybody else want to speak during this public comment period? Okay. We'll move on to general business. Does anybody have general business? Okay, we'll move on to the public hearing portions. So the first public hearing we are going to look at is HPC Resolution 02-2024.
In order to discuss or vote on this item, commissioners must have been present for all meetings regarding this issue. The only commissioners present and eligible to discuss and vote are Chair Alcorn, Commissioner Field, Commissioner Smith, and Commissioner Ritter. Since Commissioner Ritter is absent, this item does not meet quorum. Therefore, HPC Resolution 02-2024 will be continued to the date certain of October 21st, 2024.
My mic isn't working. Do you mind if I ask a question? It's okay. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, but it won't be on the record.
Oh, okay. Well, sure. So my question was, since at the last meeting, it looks like the only business was to move the discussion out to the date certain of today. Is that a sufficient meeting for us to have missed to not be able to vote? I'll take whatever answer is the answer. I just wanted to double check on that.
In terms of being present for all of the meetings?
Right.
Right, and so I think there was a little miscommunication in terms of who was present for that meeting. This is not standard that we have multiple continued hearings, and so I think it was just kind of miscommunication between the city clerk's office, city attorney's office, of who was present where. And so we went ahead and let the applicant know that, we wouldn't have a quorum. And so at this juncture, we're just gonna have to continue it to a date certain.
Could I ask a question? At that future meeting, will we be able to be involved and vote?
Only those that were present at the very first meeting on the item.
Which is
June 15th, July? I don't have that date in front of me.
June 17th.
So if you were present at the June 17th meeting, we can vote if it appears next month.
Yes, and we just have to confirm that there was no additional discussion between that first date and then the next October date.
Okay, thank you. Is there anything else that we need to do for that public hearing? Okay. All right, so we will move on now to HPC Resolution 05-2024. So we've already heard public comment for this public hearing. So we're going to go ahead and have Sarah present the additional information.
Again, in order to discuss and vote on this item, commissioners must have been present at all meetings regarding this issue. The only commissioners present and eligible to vote and discuss are Chair Alcorn, Chair Murib Steele, Commissioner Fields, Commissioner Fisher, and Commissioner Smith. Commissioner Henderson and Commissioner Honey, please leave the dais at this time. And then with you 5 present, we have quorum and the hearing can continue.
Well, good evening, everyone. I'll kind of go quickly through the application, as much of it hasn't changed. They did add a couple sightline drawings that we'll talk about a little bit more in depth. So as was stated, this was continued from the July 15th meeting, and the applicant did provide some updated sightline drawings as well as renderings. So location and building, it's that second story there that the pergola is going. This is just a bit about process. The intent, the public hearing notice, it was noticed, and then posting and signs were updated to note the continued date. And then the HPC has the final determination to approve of conditions or deny the COA or continue it for more information. So just a quick overview of proposed changes as well as the criteria and recommendation. So they're looking at doing, as we noted before, a louvered shade structure, about 817 square feet with a height of about 10 feet. They're also looking at doing an outdoor kitchen and fire pit, but neither one of those will be visible. This is that south elevation looking from Main Street. As you can see, it's on the western side of the building. It is a powder-coated steel structure. This is a bit of a rendering showing the fire pit as well as the outdoor kitchen, noting that it is below the wall, and then also just the kind of east elevation looking from Sycamore of what that structure will look like. These are the original sightline drawings from Sycamore and Main. As you can see, it's across Main Street is the only sightline of which this will be visible. You did request to look more kind of up the hill moving east, noting that it will be visible from the hill by, I believe, the kind of 3 ladder sight lines. One thing to note is that since it will be visible, but overall the scale and the massing of the structure is in keeping with the main building. It is subordinate to it. It's located on a non-historic portion of the building. So overall does not really affect the integrity of the building or the historic district overall, and isn't affecting any historic material. These are a couple renderings showing it. It's a little hard to see, but kind of just under the sign, they did draw what the structure may look like within that picture, and then also provided a 3D kind of modeled rendering of it as well. So it will be visible, but it is minimally so. And so looking at the criteria, we look at the Secretary of Interior standards, the Preservation Design Guidelines, as well as the ULUC. And then staff has found that it met the criteria, so we are recommending approval of the COA. And that is all I have. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Sarah. So since we had the public comment at the previous meeting, we'll go ahead and call for a motion and a second to then discuss the updates. Would anybody like to make a motion?
I move to approve HPC Resolution 05-2024, approving the certificate of appropriateness for 2329 West Main Street.
I'll second. I'm sorry. I'll third.
You can third.
All right, so we'll go ahead and discuss. Does anybody have any questions on the updated material for Sarah or the applicant? And also, would the applicant like to come up and speak?
Good evening. My name is Dale Irvin. I'm with Custom Decks. I was here a month ago when we spoke, and I know you guys had some questions for the tenant as well as the designer, so they're both present tonight. If you guys want to come up, or do you guys have any questions where you want to ask?
Jason, did you have some questions?
Well, we spoke a lot last month about color, and so I'd love to pick that up and maybe hear from the applicant.
Want me to bring this up there?
Um,
This is a piece of the material that we're gonna use.
Okay.
They do wanna do black. I know I originally showed tan, but this is the exact material. Yeah. You
Okay.
want me to bring this up here so you guys can look at it?
Yes, that would be great. Thank you. Great. All right, while we pass this around, are there any other questions that we can start to answer?
I have a question. At what point was the third floor added to the building? Like, do we know what date that was?
We will see if we can get you an answer to that. But I believe the second and third floor were probably added at the same time.
1985.
Thank you.
The piece that you're looking at is the louver. It's about 2 inches thick, 8 inches wide, and it sits on a spring pin which rotates, excuse me, from flat to open, so you can allow sunlight and airflow. So it is the portion that covers the top of the louvered roof. When it's closed, you would only be able to tell this if you were on the roof looking at it. When it's closed, it's flat on bottom and it's curved on top to allow water to drain. The side profile, the beam that wraps around the outside that you can see in the rendering is 8 inches thick as well, 8 inches wide. So if you can imagine coming down the hill, you know, you're 150 to 200 yards away, an 8-inch wide beam going around the outside is all that's going to be visible as you're coming down the hill there. So really not very thick at all. Did you submit the other ones in the area?
Yeah, I have that here.
Did you guys get a copy of all the other structures in the area similar to this?
No, I have the little papers up here, 8.5 by 11, but I can bring them up too.
Did that not come through to you?
It didn't come through in time for it to be posted, so we required it be brought to the meeting
I
so
see.
that it can be introduced in the record at the meeting.
Okay.
So it was posted prior to this information being provided.
And actually, sorry, if you could just speak into the microphone so we can have it on the record.
I have a question about this, just a point of order. This is being provided to us up here. This is supposed to be provided to the public. That's why this is televised. That's why, you know, the public can come and see this. How will they be informed of these changes?
Copies have been provided that could be picked up when they came in, so they do have those copies, and then it'll be included in the minutes as part of this,
It'll
as
be
part of the public hearing.
included in the revised packet that I post the day after the meeting.
So the people who are watching on Channel 8, who are glued to their televisions right now, are not going to be privy to this information.
Not until tomorrow morning when I post it in the revised packet.
I see.
So oh, go ahead.
We do have a digital copy that was sent to us, so we can project it as well.
Oh,
I don't share.
here, let me take a look.
last page of that
Okay,
has it on there.
great, thank you.
So, can I ask a question? So I've got a question. While we're reviewing this material, I'm curious why you decided to go with the black instead of the tan that shows up in all the drawings. You know, if you look at the building, the trim on the brick is a light color, a tan color. And when I looked at this last month, I was under the impression that you were going to select a color that would complement the existing trim on the building. Was there a reason behind the decision?
At this meeting last month, it was made clear that black would look way better. I believe a
Okay,
gentleman here on the
okay.
right. The black would look better with the aesthetics of the building, I think is the way it was put. We can probably go back and look
Okay.
at record. But the tenant also, I think, kind of agreed with that and said what? With the aesthetics?
Well, we were trying to provide some consistency with similar buildings along Main Street.
Do you want to come up
Sorry,
here and
sir,
speak
if you
to the
could,
mic?
yeah, come up to the podium. Thank you.
You know, we were making a choice. I mean, we know we had the ability, if we wanted to just use consumer umbrellas up there and do something like that, we could do that without anybody's permission, but we didn't think that would look, it'd look like a trailer park. I didn't care for that. When you look down Main Street, there's other structures, I don't know if you have a picture of that, there, that have been approved that are in existence, that are all black metal against the brick. And we thought it would just be a more consistent look to keep it similar to what these other structures were.
Can you
Yeah,
state your name for the record?
My name is David Snyder. I'm the owner of Continental Realty Group. That's the tenant on the third floor of the building.
Okay, thank you, appreciate that.
Yeah.
And
And I might add, we could have saved a lot of money doing this and done something without, that didn't need approval. We wanted it to look very quality, very consistent throughout Main Street. And we're going to a lot of expense here. This is going to be about $100,000 for us to do it this way. But there's a consistency between this, the brewery, several of the other buildings all along Main Street, and that's what we were trying to achieve. Anyway. Anything else?
I would like to
Yeah.
say that when you came last time, the reason for, when we asked why it was tan instead of black, you said it was because you thought it was what would be approved.
I believe what I said is
wasn't
I
here.
don't know why it was, that color was chosen. I looked at the renderings and I assumed, well, I guess because it matched the
Okay.
best. But I also said I don't know why. I wasn't part of the color
Okay.
selection. That would have been these two,
Okay,
which is why they're here tonight.
Thank you.
And I don't know that we have a preference. I just think there's a consistency as you look down Main Street. So many of the other buildings where these things have been approved are black. Would I vehemently object to tan? Not really, but I think it looks more consistent.
One question we had from last month too was just about the length of the louvered patio and why it's just a portion of the patio and not the full length.
I'm sorry?
obvious
Uh,
cost difference.
Yeah.
That's a requirement by code. We actually met, boy, I can't remember his name, someone from the building department came out there, and that's as big as we can go. They won't allow any bigger, so, yeah.
And I might add, we're asking for an approval up to this amount. We, depending upon the final decisions internally, we may decide to make it a little smaller. But we intend at this point for it to be this size. Did you have a question on the use or something?
No, I don't have a question at all on the use. I said that I didn't have any questions based on what I was presented with before the meeting. So the color change is not what we were presented with. Are there any other surprises in here that were not presented? I guess that's a question for Sarah.
As far as I can tell, the only change is the color and then the addition of the, just example photos. That's the changes to the plan set. Yeah.
Right. Does anybody have any other questions or thoughts before we move to a vote?
Well, I would like to just clarify that what we vote on is going to be what you actually do, instead of coming in with more surprises. Is that correct?
Excuse me. Yeah, I want to get on the record that the tenant has said he doesn't necessarily need it to be black. He's fine, it sounds like, with either beige or black. I think he was, after we were told last time black would look better, I think he was probably trying to kind of go with the flow. We don't plan on changing anything. We moved to black because we thought maybe that's a better chance of getting approved. It sounds like he's fine either way, but we don't have any plans of making any changes outside of what's already been approved by the building department.
So does that mean tan?
Tan, Adobe, it's whatever you.
Okay.
I mean, I guess if,
Well, if I had my preference, I would rather do black because I think it's more consistent. But if you're extremely opinionated and want tan, it's not that big of a deal to me. But I just think it looks, I'm sort of looking for consistency as I look down through Main Street.
Well, sir, I think we're looking for consistency too, and that is what is presented to us to be voted on, to be questioned and all of that needs to be what you're actually planning on doing, instead of, well, we might do something else, we might do something
that's
different.
fine.
I mean, it's a process question, and it's more for our staff, but,
Yeah.
this is what we've been presented to vote on, and I would like to have some certainty that, there's not going to be decision made down the road because somebody felt
That's
it
fine.
was
I
better.
would agree to that.
Thank you.
I would just ask the commissioners will your vote change based on which color we're voting on? Because I hear the applicant saying, we'll make it whatever color the commission approves. And so I think it's a little bit incumbent upon us to signal what our preference is and avoid a guessing game.
Okay.
Oh, you picked tan. Sorry, we all wanted black.
Okay.
Denied.
And then I guess just for Atasi, if that were the case, if we did decide we prefer black, would we just amend the motion? Okay. So I guess we need to discuss then brown or black.
And I don't want to belabor points, but for our purview, is color what we're here to discuss?
No. First of all, I just want to thank you guys for showing up this time. I think there was a little confusion last time in bringing yourself and the tenant and the property owner. It really, it creates a lot more clarity in this situation, so thank you for coming tonight.
thank you, guys.
Okay, so I think we need to decide then if we're going to move on with the motion as it stands or conditionally amend it to black.
So the motion on the table right now is a tan. Is that correct? Okay.
I move to approve the motion as is.
Second.
Okay, so then we'll go ahead for a vote.
Wait, we have to vote on that. So,
We do have to vote on that.
Okay, so to vote to continue forward with the motion as originally stated.
With the amendment first, and then the motion as originally stated.
Okay, well, I think we decided we're not going to amend, we're just,
Okay.
we'd like to approve as is.
Yes.
Okay.
then no.
Okay, so then we are just moving forward with the vote
Main motion.
okay, so the motion that's on the table. On the resolution or on the motion? Well, the resolution on the table, yes, as is. Okay, I'm gonna open up the voting.
Sorry, the motion is 4 in favor with Commissioner Smith voting no. The motion carries.
All right. Okay, so we will move on then to comments and reports. Community development staff, do you have anything to report?
Not at this time. Thank you.
City attorney or clerk?
No, ma'am.
No.
All right, board members, any comments or updates? Okay, and none from me this month as well. So with that, I adjourn this meeting at 7:06 PM. We'll take a 5-minute recess and we'll have a study session following. study session of the HPC at 7:12 p.m. We are going to continue forward with our study session topic, our 5-year strategic plan and work plan. So Sarah, if you want to present first.
Yeah, just one second, trying to pull up the presentation. It wasn't, was it PowerPoint? No, so I'll just pull it up through the PDF, which works.
Okay.
Just fine, I just need to get to it. It's super short, so, no big deal. That's not. That's right, thank you. Apologies. Let's do it. Well, there's not a date. Maybe I don't know.
Are you looking for this?
No,
Object.
she has there's a short presentation.
Okay,
But
do
yeah,
we
thank
have
you.
that?
Yeah, we got it.
It would have
Yes.
been in the back of the.
This guy.
Yeah, exactly.
It's at the bottom
Back
of
the
your,
packet.
do you want to borrow my iPad?
No, that's okay.
I think we've got, but appreciate it, thank you.
Oh, you were talking to him, sorry.
There we go. So we're just gonna kind of scroll through things a little bit. So this is kind of the next iteration. I've scrolled far too much now, apologies. Okay, I'm just gonna start here. So the slide was just kind of overview. We're just gonna look quickly at kind of how we define the goals and then go into a little bit of explanation of the objectives, and then we can start talking about those draft objectives that were provided. So for the goals, we had 3 main goals, the first one being preservation. And I kind of, and feel free to correct or amend how these definitions are. It's just kind of taken based on our conversations. So focusing on stewardship and preservation of both the city's tangible and intangible examples of its cultural, social, economic, and political heritage. This is to kind of reflect the trends of understanding that both the built environment as well as those stories that may have been lost or no longer have a built environment component, that kind of history of your city and people are also part of kind of preservation as well as looking at, this also starts to kind of capture history and preservation related to marginalized communities, which often in the field of preservation have been forgotten, and kind of this is trends and understanding that those are equally as important and should be also told. So that's kind of adding in that tangible and intangible, kind of encompasses all histories or all kind of histories of the city and its residents. Sorry, let's do it this way. There we go. Connectedness and outreach, looking at breadth of activities focused on education, engagement, and collaboration with our residents, property owners, as well as organizations interested in historic preservation. And this is kind of understanding of both us, again, providing that education opportunities as well as collaboration and our own learning and connectedness to our community. And then the last one being internal development, which really looks at that ongoing education and learning related to the field. Also, kind of highlighting that importance of that collaboration between city council and other boards, so also education for them. I think we're already definitely on a good footing in terms of city council support of historic preservation, but kind of always growing it and ensuring that support to really make sure that preservation can grow and thrive in Littleton. Any kind of questions or concerns about the definitions of those goals? Great. So looking at objectives for the strategic plan, we do want to have our objectives. This is kind of how we start narrowing down the goals, as you can see, really broad. Don't really know kind of how you maybe accomplish that or can measure that. The objectives start providing that specificity and the ability to kind of measure and kind of almost tick off and say, we're working on this is how we're accomplishing it, but it has kind of that kind of standpoint of saying, yes, this has been what we're doing, this is what we've done, et cetera. They are a bit less static than, say, the goals. The goals tend to be a lot more static, as I've mentioned. The objectives can change and shift. We may, as going through some of the work that we do, engagement with residents and understand that, something we didn't think about yet, that should be added and included. That could be an objective that's added or amending an existing objective. So these, this portion starts to be a little bit more fluid or kind of as part of that living document. And then take a step back though, they are still somewhat broad. We do get to kind of make those specific steps of how we're gonna accomplish each objective kind of within those action items or that 1-year work program. So we may not define this go-round every step that could fall under an objective because it may not be a priority for the 1-year work program that's also included in this. Any kind of questions about that, further explanation? Awesome. Okay, I'm gonna go up to the draft objectives, which I think are opposite side of things. I wonder if I can just click. Yep. There we go. So I figured we'd kind of just go through these, if you have any questions or concerns or need further explanation of kind of what they mean, and if anything needs to be added or taken away. So let me see. It's not really letting me zoom in. So for preservation, kind of from what I was hearing, understanding, looking at code to make sure that it's working both for the HBC and the residents, really finding that beneficial balance between protecting our resources as well as ease of process and use for applicants. This is an extra step that our residents and property owners have to take on. So we want to make sure that it's an incredibly vital and important step, but that it is one that they can comfortably move through. It also helps kind of grow that support for preservation. Again, looking at support for the development of a citywide historic preservation plan, looking at kind of advocating for the preservation within long-range city plans and projects. They've already kind of started doing that with is included in the Envision Littleton. It's included in the SEDS. It'll be a part of the Littleton Boulevard project that's coming up. So something that we're already doing, but kind of want to keep focusing on, wanting to keep making sure that preservation is thought of in those kind of spheres. An example of an action item for this would be to include the Littleton Boulevard plan under it and saying this is something that we know we have and want to have input on.
May I ask?
Absolutely.
A question? One of the things, I think it probably belongs under this first bullet, is that as far as ordinance goes, any action in a historic district or with historic buildings has a context to look at in addition to what you would do for a building permit. So that's, a real key difference. You can get a building permit, but when you're in a historic district, that context applies. And that needs to be, very, very clear to everyone, applicants and everyone. And I think that as we do this, we have to bear that in mind. And because we do want to make this easy, but this is not just, getting a building permit. It's understanding how historic preservation is different and how it is different in a historic district.
So does something need to change up there based on that
No.
why are you offering that now, I guess?
I'm offering it now just because it's something from a note perspective that I think we need to bear in mind as we are trying to simplify and make this accessible to residents and property owners.
Sorry for the things off to the side, but it might be a little easier to read now.
Great. Very good. Great. So the next one would just be the kind of continual assessment of properties or districts for local designation, and then identifying and celebrating stories of all Littleton residents, kind of getting back to that tangible and intangible piece. Good.
Can we tackle each one separately before you go on? Just to,
Yeah,
so we can have it, and I'm open to people saying that's not a good idea. But for me, it would be helpful to now tackle preservation before you overviewed on the other two.
Absolutely.
On that note.
Yeah.
bearing in mind public comment about the importance of making progress on Littleton Boulevard. I'm looking for where that is in your list of objectives right now. It might be under the second to last one, assess properties or districts for local designation.
It can be a part of that. When putting these together, I kind of saw it falling more under the advocate for consideration of historic preservation within long-range city plans and projects, because what we're developing would be a sub-area plan for Littleton Boulevard, with a component of that being historic preservation. So that's kind of where I see it, and it's going to be included in the plan, historic preservation is. We're already putting that in the scope from your comments as well as city council. That is an important component of it. So it will be included, and that's kind of where I see it under. Now, one to your point, maybe recommendations from that plan, those could start to fall under that assessed properties or districts for local designation. So that kind of the outcome, so it has a role. Looking at local designation, and maybe this is something that can be broadened a little bit past just designation, because one of the things that we are probably gonna be looking at with Littleton Boulevard is a historic district the way to go? Is an overlay of some type, or another mechanism of allowing preservation a way to go? So maybe it's amending the assessed properties or districts for local designation to kind of maybe broaden it past just local designation, but other kind of regulatory options that go along with historic preservation.
So the public comment we regularly hear is design standards and guidelines, design standards and guidelines.
Correct, which we,
Where in what all those things you just said, how does that mesh up with establishing design guidelines and standards for Littleton Boulevard?
so that would be, we can add that. I think that could be added as an objective to kind of ensure that all design guidelines are kind of up to date, or that those areas have it.
So we have the latitude to establish design standards and guidelines for Littleton Boulevard, irrespective of what's going on with the
Probably
Macro
There would
plan.
need to be
Not.
like a district over it. Like we could
Yes.
establish those guidelines, but nobody has to come to us currently to make changes to those buildings.
So it really isn't the next step.
correct. It's gonna,
Because you're absolutely correct, there's no regulatory framework right now.
That's what I'm
because,
trying to get
yeah,
at.
they're not designated or in a district or even in that overlay. So as of right now, it would be very challenging to implement guidelines and standards.
Right.
Or
So
we
if
could
we
have
as,
them and they wouldn't really do
Right.
anything.
so it would be like just writing something on a piece of paper and hoping people read it, right?
Right.
Right. So if we wanted to be because I've gotten a general sense from commissioners that we all feel similarly about the importance of Littleton Boulevard, right? No one's.
Absolutely.
And so if we wanted to do something in the shorter term, not the longer term, what is it that we could do that had some regulatory teeth that could also be incorporated into an objective for our short term,
We
you
can
know,
make
for
it
the
a
next?
designated historic district, is that what you're trying to?
I'm asking because I'm the novice here and so I don't know what regulatory tools we have at our disposal. What?
I was like,
one thing that we hope to accomplish with the Littleton Boulevard plan is to kind of assess and understand the feasibility of what that regulatory step looks like. So we're not, I wouldn't say at a point of being able to kind of determine an effective regulatory step for Littleton Boulevard, because having resident and public input is important as to kind of what's that level of preservation that seems appropriate, that seems feasible. That portion in and of itself is pretty disconnected. It's not downtown, very concentrated set of buildings. Laughlin Heights, same thing. Littleton Boulevard, it would be
Well, that's a judgment call.
wait, I have a
no,
question.
it's from looking at best practice in terms of historic districts, having the predominant, then it would be more non-contributing structures than contributing structures. So there's not enough of a concentration where a district may or may not make the most sense. So that's one thing that we would like to start to understand is kind of what would make the most sense. Also, we can't just create a district. So there is issues with that in terms of public approval and that process, and there's public hearings related with it. So the engagement portion for Littleton Boulevard may also help assess, is this something residents, business, property owners even want? And is there a compromise? Because we do recognize that these structures are important, but maybe best practice or feasibility, historic district isn't the way to go. Maybe there's something else. And so we're not quite at that point of really being able to apply that regulatory next step because we just don't know what would make the most sense. Also, getting the public input and approval is a really big piece of this. Designations haven't occurred, especially on a district level, much in Colorado in a minute. So really making sure that this is something that the public can support is also a really big part of this.
So any effort we made, just because it's.
You're good, go.
So any effort we wanted to take to do something with Littleton Boulevard, almost by definition, has to be subsumed by the process of the historic preservation plan for Littleton, for the whole city.
No.
Okay. So I'm missing how we can two-track historic preservation plan, because I'm hearing you guys say that process has all these things that are gonna guide our thinking on Littleton Boulevard.
So I think I think we're talking about two different documents, so there's the document that will be the Littleton Boulevard sub-area plan, and then there's the historic preservation plan, right? So, I wasn't sure if you were referring to both in the same or
So the
not.
sub-area plan, we can make progress on that irrespective of the historic. So can we put that in the objectives?
So I.
Belong in a 5-year plan, or is Littleton Boulevard best addressed in the work plan, which is shorter term?
So that's kind of how I was thinking it would be set up. So because the objective of the advocate for consideration of historic preservation within long-range city plans, the Littleton Boulevard is a long-range city plan. So that's why I kind of put that one a little bit more broad, because it is, other things may pop up and projects that we want preservation to be considered. So one of the action items under that, say for the next year, can be involved with the Littleton Boulevard sub-area plan that City Council is wanting to move forward with, provide input, help and assist with that. So it's not so much calling out specific plan in the objectives for that one, as opposed to kind of including it under this objective, is where I was coming from. Now, if there's a bigger consensus that you really want to have that as an objective, that's fine. It was just, that was the kind of reasoning.
Well, I'm curious too, like what happens in the interim with Littleton Boulevard? Like this long-range plan is a long-range plan, so.
I think that's our opportunity then as a
Yeah.
board to talk through some of these other bullet points, which is to identify and celebrate the stories that occur up and down Littleton Boulevard, to build on the work that we started before the pandemic of socializing the idea of Littleton Boulevard as a place that matters, a place that has historical value to the city.
Yeah, and one, oh, I'm sorry.
I just have a question, so, in terms of like the historic district being opt-in or not opt-in, does that change the steps that would be required if it was an opt-in upon Littleton Boulevard? Like if they opt in to be part of it the same way like Main Street did at certain points.
That would be a whole different conversation, I think, around.
Right, but then it would be a quicker process and you could get some of them to opt in and then essentially engulf it.
You also have, any building owner that wants to protect their building
Right,
absolutely can work through the process now.
right.
And we can do some local singular designations.
And then you'd have more historic in a combined space and it would be easier to create a district.
Yeah, the main, and one of the reasons why we have been a little hesitant on a true district is because Littleton Boulevard, as Sarah was indicating, the buildings are not quite clumped. So therefore you would end up with a lot of non-contributing structures
Right.
that would have to come before, they'd still have to come before this commission though. And will that be as, palatable in approaching those building owners to work towards setting up that district? You would bring up an interesting point with the opt-in. I have to admit that I need to know a little bit more about how the mechanics of that actually work.
So that's how Main Street was created. They got to
Yeah.
opt in on it and be part of it. So if we could essentially get people on Littleton Boulevard to opt in, who, because of the certain buildings that are sparse, then we're putting guidelines on them without going through all these other emotions and protecting them for the future.
I don't know the exact process of how it was created, so that's the only thing is like, can't really answer tonight, is kind of, to your point, like, what does that process actually look like?
I know it was like voted on by the mayor, and then it was something, my dad was part of it, he talked about, he thinks he's so
Right,
cool.
but if I can throw something out, do you guys think it would be useful maybe to have staff come back to us with bullets of 3 or 4 options? Hey, here's option 1, here's the pros, here's the cons, and here's how fast or how slow it is. Here's option 2, pros, cons, how fast. Here's option 3, pros, cons, how fast. And then we could talk about it then, like a special study session, just about
Specific
that.
to Littleton Boulevard.
Yeah.
About Littleton Boulevard,
Yeah.
because it's so important to
And
everybody.
I think we could do a really good job of educating the owners on Littleton Boulevard to start considering an opt-in thing while we're studying that.
Well, and
Cause
I
then they're
guess,
protected through
I
sale and whatnot.
I guess that's part of the question that I would have is, would we be putting the cart before the horse when it comes to studying the full area? One of the things that we built into the scope, or that we're working on building into the scope, is we understand that everyone, Historic Preservation Commission, City Council has indicated the same to us, right? Like, we wanna get this protected ASAP. And in order to do so, we do feel that the Littleton Boulevard sub-area plan would allow for us to get the engagement that we would prefer to see from the community. So that would be a part of it, but in the scoping of it, we've also, our proposal, it has been approved, we're still working through budgeting, et cetera, but our proposal is, consultant, you work with us on engagement, and then because we have so many great, documents already, but they haven't been implemented, right? And we wanna make sure that they're still the right, fit for what we're doing. And their consultant's going to engage with
And what are we
historical
doing?
preservation. But, sorry, real quick,
Yeah,
that part of the scope would then be not only come out with just some recommendation, that has the potential to sit on the shelf, but actually work with us to write what we'd like to implement. That way, when the plan is done, we can quickly turn around because you've already been engaged and the community has been. And my hope anyway, once again, this is something that I would like to see, my vision for it, would be to be able then to bring forward that document that we've all spent, yes, it would be some time, it would be a year plus. But we've spent that time and we've come to understand what the community wants, and we've also come to understand, or had our input into it, right? And then we'd be able to say, all right, consultant, we've done all this great work, work with staff to finish this, bring it to us, like, right away. Let's do, adoption of the plan, and then shortly thereafter, bring forward whatever ordinance or, overlay, et cetera, that we would like to put. That's what I would prefer to see, but I understand that there's a lot of
The
appetite.
difficulty is I'm operating under some ignorance. I mean, I could use some education on the different tools that'll be available. Even if they're not actionable right away, it'd be useful for me
yeah,
to
cause I don't
go
like
to
that
college on
plan
this
at
stuff.
all,
Okay.
actually.
Because you're talking
It
about
seems like
moving
a
forward
year,
on
we're
a
gonna
sub-area
move
plan, and
buildings
we're all
and
like,
process, and
blank
we're
sheet
just
of
gonna
paper,
write a
what
piece
are
of
we
paper that
doing?
they can say no
I think
to.
you just made a very good case for why the thing you're describing needs to be one of our objectives. It's that important to our work in the next year. And it may be just semantics, work plan versus objectives. But I just look at this list and I'm like, how is Littleton Boulevard not as elevated as historic preservation?
So the great thing about this is it's your list. And, we may feel that it fits under long range, but if you want something called out, like if you want us to still, with other long range envisioning, to keep things in mind, but you still really wanna highlight Littleton Boulevard, I think we can do that on a separate line.
Especially
Yeah,
because
I
the
think
city
it's
council
important.
said.
Well, and I think there's some urgency in Littleton Boulevard because the Littleton Brewery is almost completed, and in time, things will start getting torn down, and I'm gonna tell
Well-
you that like land buying and commercial development is about to really take off down here, and if we don't protect it and we spend a year creating a piece of paper, that feels wasteful of time
And there's
and
so-
of resources that could save buildings that exist right now.
One kind of reason for that time a little bit, and this is kind of where I'm coming at perspective-wise, is, to Jared's point, it allows for that engagement. Historic preservation kind of constantly has to fight to be at the table. And so the one concern with moving forward before we've done this kind of study and understood kind of from a resident standpoint, from kind of a quantitative standpoint, and from kind of that analysis side of things, what's needed is if we move move forward too fast, you don't bring people along always. And then it leaves a bad taste for preservation in your mouth kind of thing. So that's kind of the concern that we're trying to
Yes.
play against, is kind of understanding if we go through this process, it's a transparent process, we've talked about this, these are the items we're looking at, let's get everyone's feedback, business owners, property owners, residents as a whole, is really important in terms of that. So that's kind of where we're coming at from it, is wanting to have that piece so that everyone is kind of brought along the way, and we're not losing people because preservation can have a really bad taste for people, or
Yeah,
it
but
seems like an extra
Here's
step.
my question on that, because like when Alamo was designated historic, I mean, I wasn't part of the commission at that time, but you sent out all these letters, 16 people voted. So how much outside engagement are you really anticipating getting throughout this whole motion of stuff when only 16 people even were part of the discussion for Alamo in 2020 when everybody was at home in front of their computer?
So I understand that, but without doing that engagement, it's still like providing engagement and opportunities.
Like, how do we actually get engagement? Because you saying get engagement and showing, and not getting it is not what I'm trying to get at. Like, I'm just saying the standard method of sending out the letter or having them vote on something didn't work last time. So engagement isn't being done that way. So how are we actually gonna get engagement from the community? And if we don't, why wait for them?
Well, it's part two, it's outreach and education.
Yeah,
Okay.
and that identify and celebrate stories.
Yeah.
I think, but also too, like in the meantime, okay, acknowledge that this is gonna take a while to get some buy-in and some engagement, but there are still changes that are happening on Littleton Boulevard. Like, does the city staff or the planning staff, when they get, plans for new buildings or updates, are there any suggestions to try to make it look at least remotely like the context around it? I know there's not any regulations, and I don't know if there's anything that you can really do if it meets building code, but I'm curious if there's that.
We do suggest, because that's what we can do.
Mm-hmm.
For instance, one of the places I think which was probably a little more successful than the other was Cherry Cricket.
Yeah, Cherry Cricket looks great.
Because, and that, it still does give that nod to that building. There's
Mhm.
substantial changes to it, no doubt, but a nod to it, right? The Littleton Brewing unfortunately did not end up utilizing much of the structure. Some of it fell over that they were trying to keep, et cetera. But, yeah, but,
That brick wall.
but they did try to give a somewhat of a nod with the roll-up windows in the front. It's substantially different compared to, the Cherry Cricket, but, and that, you're right, that's kind of what we do strive for, is we are able to, have those pre-application meetings and ask those questions and indicate, it might be really nice if we did this. Now, that's the non-regulatory, historical preservation that we're kind of going hand in hand to applicants at this point in time. But
Yeah.
we do try.
I mean, my assumption would be, and maybe this is rose-colored glasses, but my assumption would be that if people want to have a business on Littleton Boulevard, they're interested somewhat in Littleton and the look and the feel, but I guess that may not always be the case.
I think they're interested in the demographic.
Yeah.
I really, I hate to say it.
Yeah.
Because I've shown a lot of properties and they're more interested in the amount of money generated in the area than the building. And, I think they learn to appreciate it in time, but newcomers don't understand it.
Well, I think that is a good point that is actually actionable for us right now. One of the items within our purview is advocacy and education. And we can do that as a board. And, you know, I think, is that in here? Because I think that's that is something that is actionable that we can actually do. We,
And get, like,
you know, as much as we would like to, we cannot act by fiat and walk out of this room tonight and declare this a historic district.
Why not?
Or, I mean, that's just not realistic. And, you know, I know there was an opt-in district, but if you look at current preservation practices, you know, I think an opt-in district will never fly again, ever.
I think we could get a lot of them involved.
But it, you know, that's tactical right now, but I think we should concentrate on what we can actually accomplish in the short term and in the long term to continue to do this. And the advocacy and education are really key, and allow, you know, the process, the focus on Littleton Boulevard to continue.
And Commissioner, we, you know, understand your inquiry as to what are the options. You know, and as I mentioned, didn't necessarily want to get the cart before the horse, but I do think we can at least talk about ways of you know, ways and methods of they're traditionally done and that are through code of preserving areas. You know, we can have that conversation though.
I'd greatly benefit from it, and then we could carry it forward for everything really that comes. Littleton Boulevard's on everybody's mind right now, but those same tools are going to be the tools that we use all the time.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah, whether it be on a single or a district basis, yeah. Yeah, we
So
can have some more.
Possibly a study session on that, that would be groovy.
And that might go into internal development.
Yeah,
Oh.
training, board training.
Phenomenal. I like it.
So I have a note, sorry, I was like, my transitions generally are great. So, sorry about that. So I have a note to add, and just kind of make sure consensus, to add kind of Littleton Boulevard as its own, objective, similar to the Historic Preservation Plan. Okay. Any other changes or additions to what's up there for preservation?
And this is the 5-year plan, the strategic plan,
Correct.
as opposed to the work plan, so
Correct.
that's important to bear in mind.
Yes, yeah, so these aren't all gonna be completed the next year. Components of them can be, but you can also, we don't have to create action items just yet for everything, it's just kind of for that work program and how you prioritize. They're also not up here in any sort of prioritization, it was just kind of, as I was writing them, they came to me.
Now that you brought that up, Kim, I think it's really important to remind us all, because I'm not remembering. We're hashing out a 5-year plan here, but a separate product is gonna be a 1-year work plan before we start actually doing stuff. Is that?
Potentially.
So the 1-year work plan kind of prioritizes the objectives.
Just yes or no, guys.
Yeah,
What'd
so
you
I think it's gonna be a prioritization of what do we wanna accomplish in the first year from this plan.
Yes.
So we're gonna have the long range, but then we're also gonna have those things that we can potentially take off in the next year while we're this commission.
And that's a great idea, that's a great process. I'm thinking time.
Well,
If we're
I
dedicated-
think it's a good point, and you're right to think time. And we are not going to hash out everything that's gonna be in a 5-year plan before we begin to work on a work plan. So work plans are, these are the things that we are going to do in the next year. The clock has started.
Right.
So,
So creating a 5-year plan can be on that work plan.
yes.
Well, correct me if
I
I'm
don't think
wrong.
that's how she's looking at it.
Well, if we're gonna wait until we have a 5-year plan before we even decide what we're gonna do in the short term, it's like.
I love making plans,
Yeah.
all
So
plans.
kind of taking a step back, this is a 5-year strategic plan in the sense that these are just kind of what we're thinking are priorities and options for the 5 years and kind of wanting to focus on it each year. We can also add things, et cetera. This also could be changed by the recommendations that come out of a citywide historic preservation plan. So in kind of my process and kind of understanding of things was that this is kind of the objectives can be live for the life of those 5 years. Things can be added to Kim's point. We don't know everything that's going to be coming up. So this is a living document, but kind of the goal of this process that we kind of have set for ending in September, October would be to have a brief document that kind of talks about these are our goals and objectives for say the next 5 years. This is the work plan from these objectives that we're gonna focus on for the next year. It's that prioritization. Multiple action items can fall under a single objective, et cetera. So it's just kind of that continual prioritization and kind of way of us continuing to look back and assess this.
For instance, one of the examples had, you know, a list like this, but then it had that much more detailed, you know, 1 to 2 year, or et cetera. So I think that's still the goal. Yeah, okay, maybe I misunderstood the conversation.
Could I ask a really dumb question?
Yeah.
If the people that own these buildings are not interested in this, then are we not wasting all our time with
That's true.
these things?
That's where education comes in. That's where that education and outreach piece can come in, is saying, yeah, you're always gonna have
If you're
people
not
who are
doing an
absolute.
opt-in and you're designating an area, you're not relying on education, you're relying on governing law.
Well, to get people, so we can't just designate something without someone's permission or et cetera. So the education piece is saying, here are the benefits, here's what you get from this is not just downsides. So that is why that is important.
What, that's not exactly true, though. You can designate things without the person's permission, I've seen it done.
Well, there's normally a threshold for so many people have to agree to go into the district, and
Yeah,
then.
16.
Well, I
Well-
remember that from the when we.
It's the
designated
majority of
downtown.
property owners.
Yeah.
No, because 120 were sent out and you only got 16 responses and 10 of them said yes. That's what happened. You can look at the docket. I was at the meeting. So like, I'm just saying that like, if the goal is education, then we go for education and hope for the best and hope that we can recruit all these people, which I honestly don't think would be that hard as long as there's grant funding and these support structures for when things go wrong. But if we're gonna go the alternate route, then why educate them?
Well, here's, education and advocacy is not educating them and lobbying for a district or some kind of protection, which frankly, we don't know what that might be. The education and advocacy that I was thinking of and that I believe is part of our purview is to, educate property owners right now on the value of preservation and the value of preserving their building and understanding the context of Littleton Boulevard. It's not, there isn't a district or any protections on the table right now. It is the kind of advocacy that, we started pre-pandemic, just, about the Mid-Mod Mile, calling attention and focusing attention on the fact that we have these incredible resources. And, that is where we are right now with property owners and residents and everyone.
And one of the things, kind of to your point, in terms of educating the public on the importance of Littleton Boulevard is, you're correct, there is a process for a non-consensual designation. Those need to be used sparingly. And you have to prove unusual or uncommon, significant, superior, outstanding. Having that public support helps that. So that education piece of that importance isn't just the property owners. I should have spoke more broadly on that one. It's not just the property owners, it is the public. Because if you can't get the property owner on board, but you have the public on board, it really starts to show just how important, how significant something is. If the public isn't showing up and it's just us, it is harder for city council to kind of approve a designation if the owners aren't on board. So that's kind of where education also is so vital.
Okay.
Nice segue to education. Yes. Absolutely. So again, kind of engaging with residents and utilizing that input to kind of grow and improve the program. So utilizing that input to understand what do residents value about historic preservation? Kind of that piece, as well as providing that opportunity to kind of educate them and help improve the program and overall. Again, more opportunities to discuss the benefits of historic preservation, potentially creating volunteer program to kind of help with programs and projects, et cetera, kind of pulling more residents along. I know we didn't really super talk about that one, but volunteer programs are always kind of an opportunity or helpful. We also have organizations within the city that are already advocates for historic preservation. Is there levels that we can help support or join with them as well? Providing opportunities for residents and property owners to kind of celebrate their historic properties. This is where I see kind of things like we've talked about, signs coming in. Letting them show off that they have this thing, that they're proud of this thing, again, tells others this is important. And if people are really proud of it, maybe it's not as scary of a process or something to deal with. And then opportunities for residents to share their own stories and histories, kind of giving that voice. Preservation doesn't just have to be the built environment. It's our primary purview, but there's also that opportunity for those stories. And again, we have other organizations in the city that also kind of do this. So it's not a go it alone situation. And then that last one is kind of connecting with organizations that advocate and have interest in preservation, as well as kind of the broader heritage. There's Historic Littleton, there's Downtown Business Association, there's broader organizations that we may be able to work with that may have interest and also provides us with other resources. We can utilize them to help advocate, et cetera. So that's kind of where those were coming from, just kind of trying to understand those different options. And I used the wrong title, apologies on that one. I just noticed that. Connectedness, yep.
If we wanted to get rid of connectedness, tonight would be the night, because Lizzie's not here.
No, we better not.
No,
We better
we're not gonna
not.
get rid of it.
She
It was
was
a typo.
pretty- she
We wanted to
wanted
make sure
that.
it was on record.
Get rid of it.
I like connectedness.
Oh, my, really?
Or,
Yeah, I think it makes
well,
sense.
no, we won't even get into it again.
I think, yeah, it's, unless there is absolute strong
No.
opposition, but
We can move on.
Yeah, the ship has sailed.
Comfortably.
Totally.
any kind of questions or concerns or discussion for this section? I think these are great. Okay, and some of them kind of, again, to that, oh, go ahead.
I think they're great too. A volunteer program is really specific. And I'm not sure I wanna be held to create a volunteer program. It sounds like a bear to administer.
Yes, so this is one of those things that,
So that's.
And would they be volunteers of the city? Like, would we need like the city HR department, or is there like a volunteer department?
so
Like,
part of,
So that one felt a little red flaggy to me.
gotcha, and that is fine, I'm happy to remove whatever we need to. One thing to preface, we put something in here, does not mean it has to be accomplished. Because one of the action items could be for this objective, to understand the feasibility of this. So it could be,
Explore.
yeah, so yes, it could be, change that to explore, but even an action item could be to your point. How do volunteer programs work currently in the city? So just because it's on an objective list, doesn't mean it has to happen. It also could be that the first step is explore feasibility, and once that's determined, it may be let's remove it, or it's let's do the next thing. This also doesn't have to be handled this year or the next. So it could be something as we feel we have more capacity, we can do it. I'm also happy to remove it.
But it-
Again, this is
it-
y'all's
I
objectives.
oh, sorry. Oh, yeah, I was gonna maybe say the same thing that you were planning to. I like the idea of leaving this in because theoretically, a volunteer program can be really strategic in terms of getting people to understand and appreciate and become educated on the value of historic preservation. And if we're doing, for example, I don't know, redoing a survey and we needed to do, drive by certain properties to log, is it still there? And, observe these few things in a template. That's kind of a nice project for a volunteer to do that would engage them more with the work that we're doing and just kind of raise awareness.
Even just like create a contact list of people who are interested
Yeah.
in helping. But then, yeah, I think there are like legal things about what kind of work is volunteer and what Like, if anybody in the city has ever paid for that work, I don't think they could be volunteers. It would have to be like a very specific thing.
But I do think that as a sort of vague, out there objective is a good thing to do. I'm in favor of leaving this in.
But can we hedge the language a little bit? Explore the feasibility of a volunteer program rather than develop? I
Yeah,
mean, it's
because
really
words-
explicit compared to all the other ones, which are super, there's a lot of wiggle room in there. But this one has this, are we gonna develop? So I love the idea
Consider.
too.
Yeah,
But-
maybe consider, I like consider.
Yeah, consider.
Consider a
Because that
volunteer.
could be, that could be
Yeah.
mobilizing,
Oh my
you know,
God.
historic Littleton
Exactly,
to
yeah.
do these things,
Yes.
Yeah,
so.
and
Yeah.
engaging
You know,
people,
We're volunteers, so.
yes.
We
But I
already
know-
have
I
a
mean-
volunteer program. It's called the commission.
I mean, there are lots of people who've lived in Littleton for a long time who I'm sure either, one, know a ton about their neighborhood and could give us information,
Exactly.
or would want to learn more about their neighborhood. So I definitely, I think from like interest, I think it's feasible, but like the tactics of it might be a little bit harder.
Yeah,
So
consider,
change,
yeah.
yeah, change develop to consider.
Okay, yeah, consider a volunteer program to help with preservation programs, projects, et cetera. Awesome. Great. Any other questions or concerns? Okay. So for internal development, looking at prioritizing continuing education opportunities, this could be attendance at conferences, this could be attendance at kind of CLG webinars, there's free opportunities, this could be staff bringing stuff and us having a study session that I think both Paige and Jason made a point of training on SOI standards, things like that. So it can be staff-led or it could be attending conferences, et cetera. This is also part of keeping our CLG status anyway, so it's always a good one to kind of have. Providing educational opportunities for city council and other boards and commissions on historic preservation. Again, I think pretty lucky to have a relatively strong support from city council at the moment, but there's always those opportunities to show this is the benefits, this is what we're doing well, this is how it impacts other boards and commissions. It's like kind of something to kind of keep in mind when you're doing your, kind of going about your business kind of thing. So planning commission obviously is the biggest one outside of city council that we can probably immediately think of. But like the arts and culture board, there's a lot of overlap. So those are kind of things that we can look at providing those educational opportunities them, as well as those kind of opportunities for us to hear from them. And then again, really kind of did specifically call out collaborating with planning commission to understand effects of development on historic resources. If it's not designated, we don't have kind of regulatory purview, but that doesn't mean that we can't say, hey, take into consideration this impact could impact X, Y, and Z. So it's kind of, it's that opportunity to collaborate with and work with them, and again, another kind of education, but it was more kind of just calling out planning commission specific, since they're one of the most kind of related boards or commissions that we have with preservation.
So we want to get on radar screens, basically.
Yeah. But I'm curious, sorry. I guess this is maybe more for the work plan, but like, how do we do that? Like, what's the best way for us all to be informed about what planning commission is doing?
That's my question.
You know, like, is there
So
an
like
update
how,
at a study
like,
session
how,
or?
would you guys ever update us and be like, hey, we're considering this building, we'd like your opinion, cause that's,
Or
I don't know if that's ever happened.
Or a joint study session.
Yeah, I mean, is
Or-
there any time
Joint
that that's
study
happened, or how,
kinda
can we request it? Cause you guys would get the planning permits before, or we wouldn't even get them. So has that ever been included
Depending
before?
on what the
Yes.
request is, yeah.
Or is there,
We have
I
done
guess,
joint study.
and this may not be like within the rules of an actual meeting, but like, could an update from planning staff or staff be, hey, heads up, planning commission is considering X, Y, or Z, you might wanna look into it?
What do
Or-
you feel is more aesthetic?
Yeah, we can do a better job of utilizing the staff update to kind of give people, the only downfall a little bit is, you know, the items that planning commission gets also, on a study session level, we can give you that heads up. On a case by case, it's challenging because they're quasi judicial also,
Sure.
right? So for them, we can't say, hey, they're gonna talk about X next week, because,
Yeah.
because they're not even supposed to know, right? So, that's where it gets a little challenging. We could try to do a better job of indicating if there's a meeting. And then, being able to say, oh, and there'll be a study session that, or, we might be able to give you a heads up what the study session
Or we
is.
can come up
But,
with topics of mutual interest. I'm sorry to interrupt
Yeah,
you. but-
no
but
worries.
yeah, topics of mutual interest for a joint session.
I think that's great. I think, we haven't had a planning commission meeting in a little while. We had a lot of large projects, that we worked on over the winter that ended up, it was kind of a two-step process. So we took a lot of large first steps to the planning commission over the winter. And now staff has been working diligently to get the second step accomplished. So we will be having a planning commission meeting though, next Monday. And I think at that point, we might be talking about a little bit more as to what planning commission wants to see. So who knows, they may end up going through a similar effort as what we're going through this evening.
They're probably gonna be really interested in our topics.
Yeah, but yeah, there is opportunity to have a joint study session. First of all,
We didn't
appreciate
even, like,
knowing
get
that
the
up
job.
front, so that's great.
Went over.
If
Isn't
you do
that
have topics,
broken
please
everything?
let me
Yeah,
know.
yes, and that's, I think that's up to us to, come up with what we think would be relevant.
I think,
So is there a way that, like, cause I understand that planning commission is quasi judicial, but like if something was happening, isn't there a way that like you guys could be like, hey, maybe you should get historic involved in this?
To them, say that
Uh-huh.
to them.
Or to us? That way you're not blowing the lid off of something, but you're also giving us a heads up that like maybe we should start chatting.
well, from a long range perspective, absolutely, we can work towards greater collaboration. On a case by case perspective, it's gonna be challenging.
Yeah, well, I
Because-
think greater collaboration would be
no.
the goal. What does that look like? What does that look like?
My
Like,
diplomatic no. You've read through my language.
Right. Cracked your
don't you
code.
dare.
No, challenging, I use a term I use frequently.
What?
The term challenging I use frequently, it's not gonna happen. Well, it's that quasi judicial
And
problem.
it is, that's appropriate.
Yeah.
Um,
I'm trying not to get in trouble with the attorneys that watch this later.
I think one of the real keys, and I can recall, the board has asked for trainings. Is that accurate?
Jason just did.
Yeah.
And trainings in, understanding, you don't have to memorize the Secretary of Interior's standards, but it is good to know where to find them because they're very, very useful. And that is, that should be how we make decisions. And it takes emotion and I feel this, or, I think this would be cool. It takes it out of it and focuses on what professional preservationists do. And, the standards are just one example. I mean, it's the gold standard in the industry. And we should be, kind of nimble with it. We should understand where it is and how to do it. And it's not intuitive. I mean, and it does require training. I would certainly, I think that would be time well spent, for the board. And that's just one example.
So pegging off that, for clarity, I think you're intending for the first bullet to be prioritize continuing education opportunities for the commission. That's for us, right?
Correct.
And then the second bullet is us educating other people. Am I reading that correctly?
Yes, that's primarily it. There is some obviously discussion.
So I would just make that super explicit. And then Kim's idea would fit perfectly under bullet number 1.
Correct. And that was kind of the intent of where I was going with it as well, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think clarity is a bad way.
You don't think what? Clarity's a bad thing?
Yeah, I don't think clarity is a bad way to go.
And I
think
am
we can
typing
provide
all
that.
this over here.
those
Jared gave a
inputs.
thumbs up
Static
on
up there.
clarity.
Yeah.
So,
They look good.
great. Okay, so is there anything that you feel like is missing from anywhere? I know we added the Littleton Boulevard plan. Is there anything else that you kind of think is missing before we start kind of
No,
going on with the next steps?
no, next,
I think this is good.
go.
Okay. So the next kind of portion of this, if we're good with these objectives and these goals, is that one-year program. Is really starting to prioritize that and create those action items.
Like
Is
from
that
August
this,
to
for
August.
nomenclature, is that the work plan? Are those the same thing?
Yes, so what we're creating and the way we can maybe start just fully saying it is a
1-year
five-year
plan
strategic plan with a work plan.
With a 1-year work plan.
That is 1 year.
Yes.
Be as specific
Yeah,
as possible, cause
yes.
he will look for every out possible.
That's fine.
I'm looking for ins, not outs. And Kim used work plan earlier, said, well, this is where this would fit in
It's
the
a
work plan.
1-year
so-
work plan, 1 year. 1-year work plan, August
Jared,
to
do you
August.
approve?
I just have a clarifying
Or is that gonna be
question.
challenging?
No, it's not challenging at all. My clarifying question is, would we be able to call it the 2025 work plan and try to do calendar year on that versus?
Oh, he's gonna have a heart attack. No, you're good with it? Okay,
I
we're
mean,
good.
I just don't wanna be
It means
held
we-
to something that we can't accomplish, and
You
if
get an extra
the
4
work plan
months.
doesn't even start till January, that's awesome, right?
Yeah. Yeah, but that doesn't
Just
mean
thought it'd
make
take
it
us a little bit
longer.
of time to finalize said work plan and then it'd be easier to update for the.
Yeah, I
I
think
love
that
that.
2025
I love
is
that.
good.
That's smart.
So we're gonna do like the 4-month figuring out what it is.
Well, we could even start doing it, it's just the
Simmer
2025
down,
plan.
extra
It's
credit
like
is
how you sell
always
the
available.
2025
We don't have
cars
to
in
use every single day next year to do this.
No,
Make
it's a
it
smart,
easier clarity
it's a
for
smart
us.
idea.
Yeah.
So excited it's toes dance.
So I think next steps is kind of however y'all wanna do it.
We got a 4-month vacation, we don't wanna do nothing. No, I'm kidding.
You gotta create the work plan first. We haven't gotten quite there yet.
Okay,
It's gonna be.
deal.
Or I'll create the work plan and that, no,
No.
people may not wanna do that.
No, he's gonna tear it apart. There's gonna
We
be so many
assign
words inappropriately
Somebody
placed.
the work plan and they come back and suggest it to us. I recommend, you wanna do it?
A work plan?
Or Sarah.
No.
You have.
I think that's kind of what I'm trying to get to is kind of, how do we?
Very skeptical
Maybe.
of writing by committee, I am.
I am very skeptical of writing by committee. But, you know, as they say, somebody has to fly the plane. And we're up in the air right now and
I'll fly the
we have to fly the plane.
So my
So
request would,
Sarah, I vote
They
for Sarah.
basically fly themselves these days.
so my
guys.
request would be, I am happy to write kind of action items based on the conversations that we've had thus far. Is there, do you want to go ahead and say, let's prioritize a few of these to kind of give me some of that guidance? Or I can just run with this fully based off of the conversations we've had so far and kind of hope for the best.
Well, I think my vote would be for our conversations and also understanding the feasibility of your time and staff's time too, because that's, I mean, we can say we wanna do everything, but, you know, we're gonna need a little bit of your time too, so I think there's gotta be that balance.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to
Great
be
point.
riddled with words, it just needs to be specific.
Yeah.
Right, and so
Well, I
this
was
is
gonna
where
say-
it gets super specific
Yeah,
also.
Yeah.
What if we dedicated next month's study session to us hashing out what we think the priorities are on
hold
the-
on, no, I gotta interrupt that. We gotta have a study session about what happened today. I gotta understand.
Oh, but
Yeah.
that's a higher priority. I
Yeah, I'm
understand what
sorry,
you're saying.
I'm overthrowing that, I'm vice chair, no.
No, but
Study sessions have more
we
than
have
one
to
topic.
give
Yeah.
Sarah guidance at some point.
Yeah. So we can do a
have to give
breakdown of
Sarah
both.
guidance at
Yes,
some point.
but
Yeah.
I think if we're gonna have more than one topic, we probably do have to be a little more concise.
Okay, so we get 30 minutes on one and 30 minutes on the
We'll
other.
bring a conch shell and make people hold the shell while they talk.
Yes.
Oh, God.
We should do
Already
that.
flies again, okay.
Yes.
Nice.
That ended
So
well.
Why don't we
Yes.
just plan to do
They
one
did great.
topic on the study session and if we cover it quickly enough, we can move on to the study session for October.
Yeah, in the meantime, staff can work on, some, finer points to bring to you to get that conversation started.
Yeah, I think that's good.
Excellent. Yeah, sorry, that was dumb.
Okay.
That works.
Are we all good for tonight? Or do you
Yeah,
have
so
anything else?
My brain is jello. I don't
Oh,
think I
I've
can
done
absorb.
so.
Yeah, well, that's also, yeah.
Well, I just didn't know if Sarah had anything else.
No, I
wanted
think
our
just to
comments
kind
on.
of make sure I have the consensus of what we're gonna do next is just, I will kind of go through based off of the conversation we've already had, because we definitely have a few things that I have in my notes that are
Okay,
action items. Kind of start to flesh out this list of saying, this is maybe the priority for next year in terms of staff capacity, and then once we come back and talk about it, also looking at what is y'all's capacity, and then is this even a priority yet for you?
okay. I
Great.
like it.
And realistically, on the work plan has to be that we have to approve, we have to evaluate COAs and approve those as
Yeah,
needed.
the actual
That's right.
day-to-day work of the,
Yeah,
of the
the
clerk.
actual
Yeah.
flying of the plane that we have to
That's
do.
right.
That's what we're here for.
Kalina, could you remind us all what you want to hear about, so we're all on the same page?
Oh, I wanna hear about what happened today.
I think
With-
maybe an overview of Robert's rules, the quorum.
And if there's something that gets out of whack, if we're forced to vote on it, or if there's a way to
Yeah, like
stall
what-
it.
Yeah, like what are our options
'Cause
when
I-
we feel like we
Cause
don't
there
have,
was no
yeah.
idea if it was tan or black.
yeah. And I know we're not, I know
and
we
this
can't talk
takes-
about this a
Don't
lot.
be specific, I recommend not
Yeah,
being
no, but I
specific
think
about
like
that.
if
We
we
can't
feel,
just
if we
rehash
feel
the
We
like.
meeting.
wanna know how we can handle something that's being presented to us that we feel like isn't firm and isn't defined in rules, and that we're voting on that could be ambiguous or changed, and how we can handle that and stop it from coming to that point.
Or, yeah,
You
what are our
want
options
staff
in
to
that?
present sort of a framework of
Yeah,
Yeah,
how that
like
would happen.
amending motions, continuing, like what are our options
Yeah,
in a
aside from-
situation that has become a little bit ambiguous?
Aside from making a motion and seconding it, cause that's
I can
primarily
have-
what's outlined.
I can have that conversation with the city attorney's office and the clerk's office and.
Good, that would
um,
be just, I think,
I'm
I
not-
would
Just
I-
what tools
yeah.
do we have in our tool belt,
Yeah,
depending on what the consensus of the group is?
we like to have
I will,
control of what's happening.
I'll certainly have that conversation. I'm not sure that I can promise I'll be on next month's meeting, but I can definitely have that conversation and report back.
Okay.
Well, is it okay that we have that conversation before we vote on anything then?
I would be hesitant on that because
That's
you might
challenging.
get more, you might get more applications next month and it's, you know, you can continue what you want to continue, but, you know, there
How
would
do
be.
you do that?
Sorry.
How would you do that?
So this could be a
How
short-term helpful
exactly would
thing.
you do that?
I think you would.
How do you do a continuance?
Yeah,
If we hadn't wanted to make a decision,
how
what
would we,
Robert's
how do we
rule
continue it
tool-
instead, cause on the thing it says motion second and then there's a vote.
So
What's-
typi-
what do
yeah,
we
so-
say?
So typically in our staff reports, and I've read about 6 in the last week, so forgive me if it wasn't in this one. But typically in the staff report, it gives several options. It's approval, denial, approval conditions, and then there should be, and the one we sometimes don't mention as much is continuance. So yeah, you are certainly able to make a motion for continuance of an item, but you have to make it for a date certain. So, and if you don't, if it's, you know, like the older term is tabling, right? If you tabled something without a date certain, then the applicant has to, republish everything, right? So they have to send out the note cards again, they have
I
to
get
do
it.
the signs again. So there's definitely a cost, et cetera, to that, and that's why we recommend the continuance to a date certain. And that's, you know, standard motion, I move to continue item XYZ to, you know, date certain to the X date, and then there'd be a second, and then there'd be a vote on that one.
Can that be written in our options moving forward
think
on
it
our piece
was.
of paper? Cause cause it literally on the,
We have
It was in the staff
provided,
report.
we have provided that, maybe not this time, because we thought that we were going to have the ability to take action. But in the last meeting, if I'm not mistaken, our
we
motion
just make
was
sure
for
that it's in
continuance.
there on the next ones, cause I'm not saying this is the first time that's ever happened or anything is, but I just wanna know what all my options are.
So you're asking kind of where we write and say the options are approval with conditions, or denial, you just want the word continuation in there as well as one of the options?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
for mine is, yeah.
Generally, the recommendation is, from staff, is not going to be to continue it.
Right.
Last time for real, we recommended continuation because they did not give us the information
was-
y'all had requested.
Yeah, it was confusing.
Yeah.
If we continue something,
But it was
can we
more-
give feedback to the applicant?
Yeah,
Wait,
can we
wait, we
ask
wanna-
for a continuance and ask for what we would want in that continuance?
So that's what you've done the past two times with
Okay.
For Real and Main Street. They added the sight lines from the hill because
Yeah.
it was specifically requested, and then you requested material examples and then others to come to the meeting that could answer questions.
Right.
Okay.
And similar with For Real, they've updated drawings as you guys saw. But because we didn't have quorum, that's why we couldn't hear it tonight.
We definitely take,
They
you
weren't
know,
here
your
tonight.
comments and reach out to the applicant and discuss with them how best to, or
Okay.
how we feel that they could meet your intent
Okay.
of requests, absolutely. And for instance, you know, I think Sarah did a nice job this evening, we had 6 people here for the item instead of
That was
one.
No, and it was
So-
great, honestly.
But we,
and
let's not get too specific
Yeah,
though.
no,
Yeah,
that
we
was
can't.
great.
So-
That was great. I do love when anybody is presenting and it feels like it's team. I did appreciate that. I do appreciate that and will in the future.
Perfect.
Well, along those lines, since tonight was kind of unusual, I think, I've said this many times, and I think that, I don't like surprises unless they involve diamonds. And when, a COA is presented, I expect that
It to be honored.
Yeah, I expect, no surprises.
And I don't think that was on any part of it. There was just something, it felt wild.
But, and I still don't understand, who is eligible to vote, in October or, on Faux Real. I mean, I left last
Well, I'm
time's
not.
meeting feeling like literally I was in an Agatha Christie locked room mystery, It's like, and then there were 4.
Yes,
It's like,
exactly.
who's gonna get whacked? Maybe the murderers are among us, And it just, I still don't fully understand that, and I don't fully understand who is going to show up and vote in October.
Well, I can
So,
tell you right
I-
now that I am not voting because I have relations too.
Yeah, you have an
So,
interest, and you have to
Yeah,
recuse.
so what I can say,
Yes.
and I just, I'll make a note of it here, is that we can probably strive to do a better job of when something is continued, maybe we can build that into our staff communication or something,
That would be cool.
who is there, who would be eligible. So that might, to be honest, I don't know how many things we've continued prior to the last few, but,
it's
so
just
I'm not sure that it
easier.
has really been an issue here until
Yeah.
recently, so.
Is that
and-
right? This is a new phenomenon, what's going on?
Yeah, I'm also not as steeped in the history of the commission, but
I
yeah.
also,
My sort of problem is this. Been an architect for 35 years. I did these type of approvals every week, whether it was an architectural review board, a zoning board, historic board, or whatever. I knew the process. Since I've sort of landed here, so to speak, I cannot figure out why certain things are done the way that they're done. So what I would kind of like to figure out is, what I'd like to see, I guess is what I'm trying to say, is the process from somebody walking in with a set of drawings to the end. And by seeing that, all of those steps, now I don't know if I can contact one of you or that has to be done in this setting. But what I'd like to do is see that, because I see certain things going on, I'm saying to myself, I don't understand why they would do it that way for all of these various reasons, like a continuance, okay? When I had a situation where I was sitting with a client and I saw that they were not gonna get an approval, let's say, because most of the people were talking about the roof line was too high, I would basically say to my client, listen, let us ask for a continuance, and we'll come back for a following meeting. I'll adjust the roof, and we'll get our approval, and that's the way it basically worked. You don't get it, what I'm used to is you wouldn't even get a continuance unless the client who showed up formally asked for a continuance, or his representative, I'll say standing next to him, asked for a continuance. So there's just so many things that I say to myself, I don't understand. You know, the other thing I don't understand is, we would get drawings, those drawings were signed and sealed by a licensed professional, whether he's an architect or an engineer. Stuff was not acceptable unless it had an architect signed and sealed. Not so much from the standpoint of you know, the architect making a buck, but just to go through the entire process of I'll say responsibility, if that's the right word, and stuff like that. I've appeared before boards in the state of New Jersey where you couldn't even talk unless you basically told them your educational background, what certifications you had, and stuff like that. I don't know, I just like to see the entire process, so I in turn can, one, understand it, and two, offer opinions. I think it should be done this way. This is probably a better way to do it. The thing tonight, to be quite honest with you, I had a speech all planned as to why I was not in agreement with the fact that that I had to go sit in the audience to talk about it. Because the project that they're referring to, there was nothing discussed at the last meeting at all. There was no additional drawings, there was no information, there was no testimony, there was nothing. It was basically, we don't have anything, so therefore it's a continuance.
I don't know if we're allowed to talk about this.
I was gonna say, it might be getting a little deep, but your point is taken on the future discussion of process.
Does that fall up under board training? Because I think that would be beneficial to everyone.
Yeah, I think that would be beneficial.
Yeah, we normally, strive to kind of tackle some of that in April during that training. But that training was more geared towards, the procedural in the meeting rather than the procedure of an applicant bringing something forward. So yeah, we can work on more of that. You're right, I'm with you. It does make me a little nervous to get into specifics on any one project, but.
I had a tendency to get a little track on that stuff, but it's, it's kind of frustrating because I would really like to try to understand the process. Maybe there's reasons that I don't understand. And maybe just going back to basics on this is what happens when we do get a set of drawings. The other thing I kind of don't understand is how you know that the drawings that are being presented to you are the drawings that are actually built if there's no continuity, I'll say, from the design professional standpoint and stuff like that. I mean, if somebody's presenting something with stone on it, or even a color on something, is there something that says, I think you even raised it at the meeting, is this gonna, are you agreeing to that 100%? This is what the color is gonna be, or whatever.
So,
If I'm making any sense.
No, you totally are. And tonight the applicant said, it may be smaller than this, out of the blue.
And we're with you, that was out of the blue as well, right? And once again, I don't wanna get into deep specifics either, but I will tell you that, we get a COA approved, right? Which is, for sake of discussion, a COA gets approved. When they file for building plans, there's a planning review of that as well.
Okay.
So, yeah, unless building forgets and doesn't send it to us, but, we do our best to look at all those items.
Also, as part of the COA process, we'll go and verify that what is built is what was approved under the COA. If they provide any changes, that may require a COA to come back. That's actually one of the notes that we require on the cover sheet, is to any changes to the COA must first be approved by the city. So if there are changes or inconsistencies, we do have that, and
So
staff can catch that.
During that inspection, could theoretically, somebody's looking for those variances.
Let me ask you a question. Some of the drawings that I've seen so far could be far from a set of construction drawings that's approved for construction. The drawings that we're seeing, they could be a separate set of drawings from the actual construction drawings. And in turn, the person that's presenting those drawings is different than the person that actually put a set of drawings into the building department and says, you know, these are the drawings that we're certifying for construction. Do you see my point?
Generally with, and please correct if I'm wrong on this, when that pops up, it would, if it's a building permit within a historic district, it gets sent to me. So I would know that there is a COA that has been done for it and would compare the two. We don't require construction drawings for COA, it's just understanding what the exterior looks like, et cetera, not necessarily how it's specifically constructed unless there's things in terms of attachment to a historic building, we may wanna see what that involves. But as part of the building permit approval process, we also approve the zoning side of things. So say there's an addition on a building, it goes through the COA process first to understand kind of just the design approval of it. Zoning still plays a role into it of saying, does it fit all of our requirements? So that is still always kind of a component of that building permit approval. And those, if they're in a historic district, are going to likely be coming to me, or there will be the note that there is a COA that was done previously. And all of our planners on staff know that if it is an historic district, the COA is likely required. So they would flag it as well. So so we don't require necessarily the construction drawings at this point in time, mostly because designs could change as part of this. There could be a condition. So it allows for that process to kind of occur, and that's why we say building permits come after the COA approval to make sure that any changes could be captured. So there is staff kind of those checkpoints where we will see it and can say, this is not what was approved under the COA, we do not approve this building permit. If that answers
So essentially, if somebody were to come.
So in other words, there could be, if I'm saying this right, there could be, let's say you have a folder for this particular project. There could be two sets of drawings in that folder. The one set would be the actual construction drawings that I'm sure have a seal from a licensed professional, whether it's an engineer or an architect. And there could also be another set of drawings in there that could have been prepared by Joe Blow.
Yes.
Who says, gee, I'm gonna help you with the design.
It's not that he's helping with the
that could
designs,
happen.
he's creating a lesser thing, cause there could be alterations made to it before. And then once it is approved, he will create a more architectural engineer layout of it that matches the specifications that were approved by us.
We're kind of straying off of our agenda, and that also makes me, want to, items not on the agenda are stuff that aren't always, great to talk, in detail about, but I take the feedback though, and what I can do is I can, talk with city attorney, et cetera, on how best to, do some more educational events.
Yeah,
Okay,
board
thank you.
training, board training.
Yeah, everything Robert said could fall under board training.
Yeah, and I don't mean to, I'm not trying to dodge, I just wanna make sure we're still in
Legal.
good.
We gotta be in
good
compliance
state.
with the Open Records Act.
Precisely,
Yeah.
precisely.
Yeah, and we have to remember this is supposed to be public. And
It is.
I mean, it's been really freaking me out, that all of a sudden people are up on the dais showing us stuff, and I just don't think that's cool. I'll say that out loud.
So I'm a little confused. If I have a question about something, how do I get that question answered? I
Email
can contact
Anastasia.
one of you directly
If
to
you
get
have-
the answer?
if
or
you have
I
a question
to stay
beforehand.
within this,
No,
He means a general question.
oh, yeah, absolutely,
on how it's done.
please do, please reach out.
I'm really just trying to understand.
Yeah.
No, and like I said, I'm trying
Understand the
to,
process because,
We're just trying to not get in trouble.
and I want to encourage the procedural question. That's not related to
No,
an
you're
item.
from
You bet.
Jersey.
Do you wanna give us a 30,000
Oh,
foot
worse.
recap of what the open record rule requires. Basically, we're not supposed to talk about stuff that's on the agenda for an official meeting in any context outside of that meeting, including this.
Yeah, and typically you're not really supposed to go, if you have something on the agenda, that's kind of what you talk about. And then we would have, for instance, you're able to request that a study session occur, sure, absolutely, it's something be placed officially on the agenda. But then we do put it on the agenda, and that's where the venue to talk about it is.
Okay, so we look forward to talking about this more on our next agenda. Good night, guys. It's 8:30, I'm tired, can we go?
No, fair.
Do you have anything else for us, Sarah? Okay.
You're like,
Then I will adjourn the study session at 8:32 PM.
Word.
Thanks, everyone.
It's been so fun.